Good morning and welcome to the Analyst and Media Conference on Implenia's half-year results for 2025. We are delighted to present our results to you once again here at our headquarters, Implenia Connect, and would like to welcome those attending in live stream. My name is Silva Merki. I'm the Chief Communications Officer at Implenia. Our presentation will be in German. You may also select the English translation in the stream, and you may ask your questions here in the room or in the stream chat in German or in English. Today we shall present the following. First, our CEO Jens Vollmar will give you a business update on the half-year results, followed by our CFO Stefan Baumgärtner, who will then guide you through the financial figures, and this will be followed by the key investment highlights and an outlook by Jens Vollmar. And finally, we will be happy to answer your questions in a Q&A session. And now I hand over to Jens Vollmar. Jens, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Silvan. Can you hear me, everyone? Yes. So I would like to welcome you here to our headquarters in Implenia. I'm very happy to see you because I saw that a lot of people do not attend physically because it's also a sign of appreciation. So we really appreciate that. And I think 6 months in the first half year, we had a lot of challenges and also a lot of highlights. And I must say it's our employees who have contributed to this. So now let's start with our operative highlights. And so what has preoccupied us? So first of all, it was the market. So the market has developed in a very positive manner. And so also let's say that the framework conditions have always worked well. And so we also had investment hunger, so to say, and all divisions were then able to gain a lot and acquire a lot of very good projects, and we also had many mandates. And what was ideal was the timing of the refinancing of our bonds. So I think just a few days, Donald Trump had then communicated his new tariffs or his new rates, and that would have been less beneficial. And so we are happy that we were able to have a head start and do it in advance, because that also then strengthened our financial structure. And so I think it is the case to say that the construction industry is quite unproductive and inefficient, and so digitalization and artificial intelligence will help us in more and more projects, not only in the back office, but also where we have had a lot of AI then applications already ongoing, but this will help us in the long run. Another highlight was for sure then also the role of the CEO at Wincasa with Philipp Schoch. We have found someone who has the necessary know-how, and who was able to take over that role. And not to forget also, our operating model has been reduced from 4 to 3 divisions, and so that also required a lot of work, and we were able to do that. And last but not least, also the CAM Swiss Properties was created. That was very important for Implenia, because INA Invest and the CAM Group were able to merge into a hopefully bright future. So at the financial leisure, I think this is what interests most of you. The EBIT was then, or has been increased then to 57 by almost 13%. That's also the result of the good work that you have performed, and also our revenue has increased by 6.6%. And so the highlight in these results that also showed then the dynamic is also the order book with 7.8 billion Swiss francs. That's a new record that we have. If we compare to last year, then we have almost not only a 10%, but even almost 14% increase. And also the EBIT target, the EBIT guidance of 114 million Swiss francs confirmed for the full year 2025. I will now then move on to these results along the 3 divisions. Buildings is the real estate sector then of Implenia, and also civil engineering has to do with everything that has to do with civil engineering, so tunneling, engineering, and also just streets, roads, and service solutions, which comprises then engineering, planning, logistics, and property services for efficient and sustainable real estate in urban centers. So we have made then a comparison to the previous period, to the figures of the previous period. And so what is interesting here, it was very positive because since 2022, we had a lot of private clients, and so we didn't have or we had, let's say, a decrease then of the orders, and so now everything is going up. It's very good with respect to the KPIs, and so we had negative pre-financed capital, and that also helped us. So what was also positive was the development of the EBIT. You can see then the significant increase, which is thanks then to the completed real estate transactions. We were able to improve then the margins, and also during the first half year, we also had real estate transactions that have also contributed to this result. And because there was also questions in this respect, well, it was also thanks to the participation in earnings from Calm Swiss Properties. So what does the vision do at all? A lot of people think just real estate or the flats, apartment buildings, etc. Well, that's only a minor part. It makes about 20% of our activities, business activities. We have a lot of greater projects. So here at the left, top left, you can see it's the Cantonal Hospital of Aargau. Why is it still there? Because it is the greatest project that we have that is being executed, and it will be handed over next year then to the owners. And we have here a dedicated unit then for health, and also lab, and also one for data center. And you will see the newest data center for a new client in Schaffhausen and Beringen. This is also a part then, or let's say a mandate or a project then of our order backlog. And why is the data center very important for Implenia? Well, during the history of the company, we have made about 8 such data centers in the last year. And so that shows a bit the trend for the future years to come. And so we have a dedicated team who takes care, who deals solely then with data centers and with the planning of the whole project. Civil engineering. So for the first time, we have reached then an order book record high of 5.2 billion. Why is this important? Because this volume is, let's say, disclosed then in the sectors where we then focus. So, for example, tunneling and also a bridge construction. And so infrastructure, and the revenue was also higher than in previous year's level. So we were expecting a higher margin, of course, but I believe that we will then obtain, or we will achieve then all of our goals that we have set. And here also certain highlight projects that prove then our competences or underline then our specialties. There's a great demand already in the markets, and that is pushed by these great infrastructure projects. So as an example, we have the so-called Kabeldiagonale in Berlin. That is one example, and we were able to do that thanks to innovative and progressive and technology. We were able to advance and do this project thanks to that. And just like for infrastructure, we really have a lot of demand for greater projects, especially for renovation or for new constructions for cable infrastructure. And for example, the electricity that needs to come from the northern part of Germany to the southern part, and also smaller, or let's say tunnels with smaller diameters. Everything is very interesting. What also shows us that how good we are then in tunneling is these projects. So we have one in Norway. So you have here projects. So we have a tunnel above the sea level, and also with all kinds of shafts, as you can see here, and the connections. You can see this is in Stavanger in Norway, in northwestern. So if you look the whole west coast, all the infrastructure that goes all the way to Trondheim, you can see that these projects seem very big, but they are just a small part of what is still to be expected. And so you can see also the other bridges that are constructed, for example, this one at the lower bottom here, the lower corner to the right in Germany. There are a lot of bridges that need to be renovated, and there's a great demand for new ones. So we are there. Let's come to the third part, service solutions. That also generates higher margins and bears less risks, and that's where we want to grow. And we can see here that Wincasa makes a great part of that. And compared to the other sectors or the other divisions, well, here we've got the assets under management. So in the first half year, what is interesting for you probably is that we were able to then gain 83 billion Swiss francs in assets under management, and through recently acquired mandates that are not yet reflected in this figure, meaning another 3 billion. And that just marks and emphasizes all our activities. Just as we have invested in Wincasa, we also want to verify if there is any other than growth to be done in other sectors or with other, perhaps then new units. And so here, other projects that show you why is all of this very relevant. Why do we try to compensate then or to add services then to these divisions? Because we can use or benefit from the synergies. Here, for example, the shopping mall in Schönbühl-Lucerne that belongs to the Swiss Prime site. So Wincasa is the one who administers this, and then Plano Vita is the building agency, or let's say company that takes over all the planning, and division of buildings is modernizing this whole building. So, Stefan, before I hand over the microphone to you for the finance, I have summarized these highlights in a video. So let the film roll.
Structure needs to be expanded and modernized. Modern real estate has to meet high standards in terms of usability, financial viability, and sustainability. Urbanization, population growth, and demographic change are putting new demands on real estate. Implenia offers solutions. Division Buildings uses its broad and deep expertise to develop, plan, and build challenging real estate projects. For example, buildings for healthcare and research. Cloud solutions and AI require more and more data centers. Leisure properties, e.g. hotels, cultural buildings, and sports facilities, bring people together and help them recharge their batteries.
Wir begleiten unsere Kunden bei ihren anspruchsvollen Projekten von A bis Z mit integrierten Bau- und Immobiliendienstleistungen.
With its wide range of capabilities, Division Civil Engineering plans and implements large and demanding infrastructure projects. In big cities, as well as in remote mountain areas, where its experience is needed for hydropower projects. Bridges are central elements of transport infrastructure. Implenia plans, builds, and renovates bridges of all sizes and degrees of complexity. In Toulouse, Implenia is building a new metro line with 4 underground stations.
So we are building an almost 4-kilometer long tunnel along with 4 underground meter stations. From the initial studies to the execution of the work, all planned using BIM. Every step requires precision and foresight. And we are working in close partnership with the client to achieve this together.
Umfassende Kompetenzen und große Erfahrungen machen Implenia zu einem europaweit führenden Anbieter. Unser Erfolgsrezept ist die enge und partnerschaftliche Zusammenarbeit mit den Auftraggebern für eine Infrastruktur der Zukunft.
The division's service solutions offers client-focused services for engineering, planning, logistics, and real estate management. Wincasa, for example, handles over 2,200 requests on average from tenants and owners every day. Being available and sorting things out quickly are crucial attributes in this business. Commercial property owners also want to see their properties being fully utilized. Specially trained teams actively market any space that becomes available.
Wir messen unsere Performance in Echtzeit und zeigen Leerstände und Kennzahlen von unseren Liegenschaften auf einem Dashboard an.
Entlang des ganzen Lebenszyklus einer Immobilie schaffen unsere Geschäftseinheiten Mehrwert für unsere Kunden und machen die Bau- und Immobilienbranche effizienter und nachhaltiger.
Grüezi miteinander.
Well, hello, everyone. So all divisions performed well in the first half of the year, and that enabled us to further improve our results. So in the first half year alone, we were able to increase our order backlog by 990 million to a total of 7.8 billion Swiss francs. This corresponds to an increase of 14.6% compared to the end of, or with the end of 2024. So we have increased revenue to 1.9 billion in the first half year, representing an increase of 6.6% compared with the previous year. And due to the acquisition of additional shares in the H41 consortium in the second half of 2024, the change to full consolidation took effect. And real estate sales also had a very positive impact on our earnings. The foreign currency effects were negligible in the first half of the year. Natural hedging takes place in the operating units. In the first half year of 2025, we generated a very strong EBIT of 57 million Swiss francs, which represents an increase of 6.5 million Swiss francs, or 13% compared to the same period of the previous year. This was achieved through more profitable business across all three divisions. In relation to the sales of 1.9 billion Swiss francs, this results in an EBIT margin of 3.1%, which corresponds to an increase of 0.2 percentage points compared to the previous year. The financial result has improved slightly due to lower foreign currency losses, which were partially offset by slightly higher interest expenses. The consolidated net profit increased by 26.1% to 33.3 million, which is a strong result considering the seasonal nature of the business. In the first half year of 2025, we had a free cash flow that amounted to minus 168 million Swiss francs. The free cash flow was significantly influenced this half year by a higher operating result, the negative development of the net working capital due to lower trade payables, and third point, the successful completion of real estate transaction. Well, our goal remains to generate a sustainable positive free cash flow through profitable operating business in all divisions. At the end of June, the cash and cash equivalents amounted to 272 million Swiss francs, which was lower than usual for the season. However, still significantly above the previous year's level of 218 million Swiss francs, corresponding to an increase of 54 million Swiss francs. Other current assets increased mainly due to higher contract assets. We have taken the appropriate measures and expect that additional receivables can be settled more quickly as a result. So we have liabilities then from services increased compared with the previous year due to additional advance payments for new projects with working groups. And in spring, we were able to refinance the 175 million bond maturing in autumn 2025 ahead of schedule and on attractive terms with a new 220 million bond with a 4-year term and an interest rate of 2.5%. We also repaid a promissory note in the amount of 30 million euros. As at the 30th of June 2025, the company had all syndicated credit facilities of 200 million Swiss francs at its disposal, as well as additional bilateral credit lines. Other short-term liabilities increased due to the bond maturing in March 2026. Despite the dividend payment, equity increased to 661 million Swiss francs, corresponding to an increase of 59.5 million compared to the previous year. And the equity ratio, adjusted for the fixed term deposit from the bond, was at the 30th of June 2025, 21.3%. For more than 4 years, we have generated a consistent operating result in every half year, even in the first 6 months, which are seasonally weaker due to the nature of the industry. It should also be noted that Implenia generated a strong positive free cash flows in each of the second half years. The free cash flow, which was seasonally negative in the first half of the year due to industry factors, improved to minus 168 Swiss francs. That is an improvement of 40 million Swiss francs compared to the same period last year. In addition, we have steadily increased our equity ratio over the last 4 years. Implenia expects its strong operating business to result in a positive financial development in the long run. Implenia increased its EBIT by 13%. The financial year 25 guidance anticipates an increase of 7%. Based on this business performance and the outlook for the second half of the year, we confirm our guidance for the financial year 2025. In the medium term, we continue to aim for an EBIT margin of more than 4.5% and an equity ratio of 25%. And now back to Jens for the key investment highlights and the outlook. Thank you, Stefan. So now I will explain why Implenia is still an attractive investment opportunity. And for 6 reasons. First of all, the markets. I have already mentioned that we expect sustained growth in our target markets, driven by the structural trends and rising demand. So there's urbanization, renovation, also an expansion then of renewable energies, and also high demand then of residential possibilities, etc. Second point, we are a leader in specialized profitable segments such as tunneling, healthcare, and property management. Also, in the data centers, we are one of the leaders. And just to mention a few examples, and that gives us a clear advantage as in a fragmented market. And third of all, I believe it is safe to say that with our risk management approach, with our value assurance, which we master quite well, I could say that our business model is diversified in terms of offerings, customers, contract types, and markets. And this ensures resilience and stability. And fourth point, thanks to our value assurance approach, we have become very resilient versus then, let's say, the volatility of the market. So we have a robust project pipeline with attractive return potential, which minimizes the risks and improves our margins. We have always had this situation in the past. And in our domestic markets, we have always then invested in our domestic market. And when you want conjuncture projects, you want conjuncture projects then to invest in there. We also have various types of contracts and also diversity, and also because we are not only active in one country but geographically spread, and that makes us very resilient and strong. The fifth point, also our management team, which is worth mentioning. So we have been working with them for years now and in a very successful manner. So they have a different background that we have, but this all leads, or let's say that this cooperation leads to a very good decision taking, and we also have a focused growth energy. This is designed to deliver long-term value for our investors, and I will come back to this point later. So the outlook, well, good news. We have a very good Euroconstruct with that infrastructure in Germany. That is a very good news. And the markets are really gigantic compared to our market share here in this enormous market. So 1% is a lot of volume. But nevertheless, we don't want to just have a growth of 1%, but we want to become significantly greater or have a significant growth. And so we do not, it's not the price, but a clear differentiation that will continue to drive our growth. And so it's important that we can do this differentiation over the next years. How can we do it? Well, we don't want to just focus once that someone has then planned his project and someone wants to be the cheapest. That is not our goal. What we want is to focus on complex, large-scale projects, a partnership-based contract execution models, and also our design and business institute has been expanded as well, and we have in the design, and we can then include our execution know-how, and then we have less bad surprises then. And another tendency that we say, not only in Germany but also in Switzerland, we can also differentiate ourselves not just with the costs of the construction, but also with but especially with our specialization and our know-how. And so our employees have to show that they are competent, that they also act in a very cooperative manner, and then they go on to the project, and then that is when then the costs of constructions are established. And that's our approach. And we also have a new standard from the SIA in Switzerland here that was published then last year, and that is the model that we follow. And second of all, we also have a specialization in building construction and civil engineering. That's how we want to be perceived, for example, then with healthcare and also research labs. So how do the patients move, or what are then the needs? That is a completely different, let's say, initial situation than someone who just wants to negotiate the price. And then we've also got then defense. Why? Because we have had a high demand. We have a certain expertise in that area because we have done some projects like Emmen and Dornhof, the airport of Emmen, and also this billion package has been used, and then they have also invested then for additional defense measures by our government. And so now we have started to be prepared, to get prepared then for this, and we have recruited specialists in this area, and so we are expecting to do more in this sector. And also internally, now I don't think that anyone can come and say that you are not a specialist, and for tunneling, after everything that we have done, we are in high demand at the international level. And there's another area in Europe. We are also the leader in the pump hydraulic plants, and because we have the know-how for that. And with all of these competences, we also want to grow in a selective manner and geographically. And last but not least, I said it, we understand then buildings in the infrastructure because we also do the administration. We know what is needed then for life cycle costs, for the managing those, and everything comes into at a very early stage and into the planning, all this know-how that we have. And so that is why everything is still very relevant. And we want to see then, besides the organic growth, if we have other further opportunities, organically and inorganically. And then I would like to come back to the next group. Implenia is growing, but we grow with differentiated then offers, and then next year we will then focus on our growth with this differentiation in order then to achieve our higher margin expectations. So I would like to come to the conclusion of my part. Sylvain, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Jens. So we have some dates here in our calendar. So we have the year-end results in 2025 on the 4th of March 2026, and investors and also our General Assembly on the 31st of March 2026. And here are the contact data for the people if you wish to contact them for questions. And now we'd like to move on to the Q&A. Jens and Stefan, could you please meet me here, come to me here on the stage? So whether you would like to pose your questions in German or in English, it doesn't matter. You can do it here in the room and on the chat. It's possible. Just please enter your questions in the chat, and we will then have someone who will give us a sign when there is a question then to answer. So who would like to take the initiative? Who would like to pose the first question here in the audience? Here I see a hand that is raised on the left. Please just say who you are and please ask your question. Alexandra Bossard from UBS. I have a question regarding service solutions. So Mr. Fulmer, you said that you endeavor growth in the pre-ordered parts and also in Vicasa. Is there going to be another mergers and acquisitions? If so, and what is the financial framework? Well, that's one of the possibilities for growth. We also have anorganic or inorganic growth activities. We have in Syria, I don't know if you know that, we have certain buildings for that have to do with physics and acoustics, and we have a great demand here. So that is actually the organic. And of course, if there are other possibilities, of course, we will have a look into it. They have to match then our level of know-how, of course, and also match our portfolio. And if we have opportunities, of course, then we will have a look at these projects for sure. Yes, but for the investment grade rating, in order to defend that, would you be also ready to increase the capital for an M&A? No, that is not a topic at the moment. Absolutely not. Thank you very much, Mrs. Bossard. Are there any other questions? Of course, you may ask questions also in the chat. So to whom may I hand over the microphone? Frisch of the Zurich Cantonal Bank. So question to civil engineering. You have had a very good proportional growth and also a very good turnover sales. My question is, what role does civil engineering play relating to those 4% of margin? Thank you very much. That's a very good question. So first of all, the margins, the reduction of the margins is really in a minimal area, and it was only then for the first half year because we always have these because of the seasonality. Are we happy with this margins? No, but we're not dissatisfied in every area. So we still have growth in tunneling and also with bridges. Those are very attractive business activities for margins. Of course, we have a certain potential for improvement. We're working on that. And civil engineering is still one of the very important, significant drivers of Implenia over the next years in Europe and also in our domestic markets. We will have infrastructure construction. And so we are convinced that we will be able to improve our margins in that area because of the higher volume. And you see it in the order book and also the pre-calculated margins. All the projects we were able to gain or to acquire have a higher margin than in the past. You probably noticed this. We have a record, or let's say a highest value for the first half year, and that is thanks to the new projects that we have acquired. And so civil engineering will remain or continue to remain a very important part. To add something, it's important that the new projects that we are acquiring are more in specialized areas. And so, they're more like Me Too projects. The Me Too projects are the ones that we want to reduce. And so the development of the margin will be predictable in the midterm. And thank you very much. To whom can I hand over the microphone? So Tonis Bomi, VVAG. So I have a question to civil engineer. If you have a look at 2023, you had 2% in 24, 2.2%. Is it safe then to deduct or to interpret this that all projects are still included with a very low margin? Because you are the absolute specialist when it comes to tunneling or also urbanization or even the construction of bridges. I mean, that is something that needs to be verified in the future. There are not very many, let's say, companies who are capable of doing what you do. And so if you can tell me in the midterm what your margin, what is the margin you're endeavoring or do you want then in civil engineering in the midterm? The 7.5% is the margin of the projects, Thomas. That is before we then charge then the functional costs. So because of course we won't have 7.5%. So, and last but not least, we don't guide our divisions with margins. But of course, as you said, Implenia is specialized in tunneling, and so we also have higher margins. And then per end of the year, we will also see an increase then of margins. There's my colleague here in the front row who is then nodding with his head. And so otherwise, the growth would not be pushed if we thought that we wouldn't be able to achieve this. And please do not forget that for the first half year cannot be compared then to the entire year because of the seasonality. You know, there are certain prescriptions and there are a lot of things then to take into consideration. So we just have to follow up on the rest of the year to have a concrete picture. Okay, another question here in the audience. I have a question regarding the buildings division. So there you had a very good EBIT. Could you perhaps do a breakdown of that EBIT? How much has come from the transactions, perhaps also a comparison to the previous year? And how much was the INA transaction, or how much is allocated to the INA transaction? How were the margins? Yes, so the Swiss properties that was mentioned by Stefan, that is a very low, let's say, million a figure. And so that was not a great driver of the change. But the rest of the result is composed of, is more of half of the result comes from the infrastructure, and another part from real estate transactions. But if I'm just to talk about infrastructure, that made about 10% without the real estate part. Is that correct? Yes, yeah, absolutely perfect. Okay, to the right at the back of the room. Torsten Satter, Kepler Cheuvreux. I have a question to Mr. Vollmer, if I can pose my question directly. What would you do, or what will you do differently, or differently than what your predecessor did? What I notice is that there has been then, say, less staff now, or I don't think it's about differentiation to history or what we have done in the past. We just look at the next phase, what is right for Implenia, and the topics that we have. Well, I said we emphasize then on differentiation. It is also due then to the history because, well, we went through a phase, you know, where we went through a transformation phase, and in the future we want to grow. And how we go about this, well, that's what I tried to explain. And yes, of course, we have also lost certain employees. What we want to do and what we need to do is we have to make sure that we become, or that we work in a more cost-effective manner. It's very important that at the levels of the functions that we can have a very cost-efficient support for all of our operative tasks and activities, and that is one of the drivers or one of the reasons why the number of employees in the first half year has been reduced. That was a simple outcome then, and we will see what the future outcome will be. But as I said, it's not a question about doing something completely different than what we have done in the past, but we want to know what is decisive or what is very important for Implenia. Who else would like to pose a question? Here at the front, Christian. Christian Halmolder, you mentioned the example in Scotland then with a nuclear plant. We haven't spoken much about Scotland. We've spoken about Switzerland and Germany, and you also have Austria and the Nordic countries. Will Implenia expand more in the future, geographically speaking? Will we be able to see more activities in other countries where you are not present, be it with buildings or civil engineering? Well, I know that buildings are concentrated more in Switzerland and Germany, but is that also something that you might consider? Well, that's what was mentioned, yes, on the last slide. Yeah, geographically, we want to grow in our lines of specialty. I mean, it is. Okay, you can say that 99% of certain projects then just are not interesting for us. But if we can we go about it selectively, you know, and we verify, is it something that we can do with a partnership, for example? And if we think or believe that we are successful, then we will do it. Why not infrastructure? Well, in infrastructure, and from the past, we know that we have a lot of experience. Organic growth in infrastructure is difficult because you rely on local partners, subcontractors, and so you have different than materials and also companies, and you cannot offer that as, let's say, a general total contractor. You can't say, I will construct that anywhere. So you need the know-how, you need local partners, you also need subcontractors, and you have to also better understand than all the regulatory instances or organs. And so in real estate, it's easier. They have a lot of practice. You don't have thousands then of suppliers. You need a very good team who can then lead the projects, and you have a bit of administration to do also. But it's geographically much easier with civil engineering. So it was civil engineering, not real estate, he was talking about, than in infrastructure. And so, of course, we want to open up then for civil engineering, but it doesn't mean that we are completely shutting the doors. No, we are still open. But let's just say that for the moment, we don't have any other countries in view, only the ones in which we are working for the moment. So a last question, perspective. You were speaking about the infrastructure in Germany and also about defense. You said that you all want to benefit those activities. I'm sure you're not the only one. But what is your concrete strategy? What are the measures that Implenia wants to implement to have their share of the pie? Well, we need to see what are the capacities in Germany and what are the expenses, because we have the public or the government has a lot then of demand there, but we will, of course, be able to benefit then with an increase then of our revenue, and we are recruiting teams and also staff that are capable then of leading these projects, but it will have a great impact also on the level of the price, because we don't have the capacities today to be able to execute all projects quickly. So we have two effects. We are an attractive employer or an employer of choice. Our image in Germany is different than 5 years ago. We have invested a lot in the markets and for the building up the markets in Germany. And today we are able, through cooperations with high schools, with universities, we are able then to recruit a lot of engineers. And besides our infrastructure infrastructure. We also have something we are building up for these special utilities. I mean, I think we have about 10 years of modernization experience, and today we have a network then of branches who work in their own markets, and they work on other projects. Of course, they have, you know, their markets, and in Switzerland we have. In Switzerland, we have had then a modernization that has been built up parallel to this, and it didn't have any impact on the other projects. And so we are going to do that. And just as I said, for the data centers, for example, we are constructing healthcare and labs, and also an organization unit then for defense. And these projects are going to increase. So we are doing various things. The market is very big, and 70% more or less, I believe, are projects where the prices, or let's say the costs, will increase. And so we hope that by entering then these markets, or perhaps then winning these tenders or these projects, we will be able to increase our margins, among other things. Another question from Lucas Baum from Tigris Capital. So after a growth of 6.6% in the first half year, based on these growth expectations, what are your expectations actually for the entire year? So we don't give any forecast for the growth. We have our guidance of that I mentioned today, and we can confirm that. And what is also to be said, well, in the midterm, we will also increase our revenues. I think that is a clear thing, but I don't want to make any forecast then for the concrete, let's say, growth expectations for the entire year. Do you see in the market, based on very attractive volumes, a general improvement pricing margin situation? And can Implenia now do more cherry picking? Well, that's what we are trying to say, or to convey actually, because of all this. That's why the environment is so, let's say, agreeable. We can focus on the partners where we can say, well, these are partnership contractual models. In Switzerland, we call it a flat run or a race. And so it's not just we are being called upon then for an execution of a project, and it's just all a question of negotiating the price. You can see it in the past. You have lose-lose and win-lose constellations, or bad quality, or that all of that had led to projects. So what we want to create added value also for the owner. We want the owner to be happy in the end, and we also want to be happy. And empirical data shows us that these kind of contractual models is beneficial for all the involved parties. And we don't want to have, let's say, a side contract just to cover some risks. So we have become more selective, and we see that despite the very, let's say, selective choice that we do, we can see that we still have a potential then for growth. Mrs. Strasburger von Ananda asks in question in English.
For half year 2 and 2026, and by how much can you expand capacity going into 2026?
Well, also, we're not going to give any guidance on the order backlog, but what is clear is that once again, and we have, there's almost 3 months that have passed, we have had a very positive order backlog, also in infrastructure. And it's important to emphasize this because infrastructure is also a very important part of the group, and it has shown some growth, and it will be able then also to continue on this growth path in the second half year. That's a positive development. And also infrastructure in Germany, that's the good part about it. We have not only growth in Switzerland, we also have some in Germany, although they are sort of behind, somewhat behind, but we think that our competence offers are still attractive. So if I can add my 2 cents, so do we have the resources? That is the question. What is also important to mention is that it's also very scalable then project. So we have our core competencies then for certain projects, but we also have subcontractors in our partnership network, and they have worked for years with us, and they have a lot of experience, and so we can do. It's also scalable, the projects that we do, and that is beneficial.
Of the drivers for the margin expansion to 4.5% and beyond, and is that likely to be linear, or is it going to be back-end loaded to 27, 28 and beyond?
Also die Treiber, die sind ja.
Well, those drivers, it's nothing new, it's nothing surprising actually. What we have to do is then to improve our contemporary business, our present business. It has to do with value assurance, so it means that we want to select them projects that bring in a higher margin and new models, organically, non-organically. Wincasa was also a very important part of that with Wincasa, Plano Vita, building construction, logistics. And Zero, we have been able to do activities with a higher margin, and we are then building up or setting up then this organic growth, and it could also happen unorganically or inorganically. But anyways, we're on the right path. Perhaps with an M&A it would last, it took a bit longer. Perhaps with an M&A it would accelerate things. Can you perhaps be a bit more explicit about the measures for the improvement of the net working capital? So we have already taken certain measures. I think the first one is for projects that have to do with tunneling, where we have geological changes with, for example, leaks of water or something. That a very good example, because I think that's one that everyone will understand, is, for example, with the bore machine at the front, when you see them turning the rocks, sometimes you have greater rock particles, and you have additional costs because that the bore head will then be used much quicker, and that is something that we have developed ourselves. So we have a camera technique that measures then the rock particles, and then if it is bigger than what we usually encounter, in that case it already starts recalculating, and that is something that we can re-invoice. Okay, so intelligent artificers have noticed that the rock particles are much greater than usual, and so it recalculates the costs. As of next year, what we are going to introduce is also an internal interest rate. So for the incentivation then of projects, I think that we are of the opinion that we can emphasize this. We always had incentive structures within the net working capital, but what we want to do is, for example, there are quite a lot of measures we could do, but one is that we can, for example, change or adjust or charge then the interest rate then internally, because that is when the employees will notice that capital costs something, and that Emplenia cannot do everything for free. Martin Hüsler has another question regarding buildings. Will there be more so the question to buildings. So during the second semester, will there be more purchases of land, and what are your expectations for the EBIT for the redevelopment for the whole year? So we have purchased a new plot. So real estate is going to remain a very important part of our strategies. So we have 30 to 40 million of EBIT in a very sustainable basis, and so we have to continue then to invest in real estate. So we had a discussion on strategy lately, so perhaps we will not do much in greater areas because there aren't that many existent anymore. So, but there are a lot of opportunities in residential buildings, for example, where Emplenia can use their local footprints. A very good example that we had, the sales that we had done was a real estate transaction that we had done 2 years before, but it worked so well that we were able to conclude this. And I think that everyone agrees. In the earlier days, we wanted to know, question, is living in a winter tour something interesting? And people were not, were quite insecure. No one really knew what the market in winter tour would be like. For example, this huge industrial building that we had, well, we were successful. And so I believe that what we do, we try and verify if we can also have a look in the peripheral areas. Is there something to do? Is there perhaps a potential project? What does it look like? And we assume that we will do something smaller, perhaps also in the future, be it on the purchase side or on the buy side or on the selling side. Thank you very much. Then, so we have a question then from which external and internal factors of the company do you base then the significant increase of order backlogs, and which indicators do you use internally then for your order backlog for the next quarters? Well, you need a client who says that Implenia is the right partner for this project. That's what we need. So we have an increase in the public sector. It has nothing to do then with politics of environment, but it has to do with technical competence and the IPA projects we were able to gain and to win, for example. And otherwise, it's just the typical, economic drivers that are important or relevant, and so urbanization and also infrastructure within the cities and all that from which we could also benefit. And so what we do is, of course, we also have a look at the backlog from month to month and to see, and that's where we get our transparency. We know what are the projects that are being tendered, which ones are being executed, in the value insurance. And so that's the ones where we see then from the tenders, have we won or have we gained a project or not? So thank you very much. Cairo Capital asks,
the organic growth of the civil engineering business excluding the consolidation of H41 Brenner Base Tunnel project.
Im Umsatz oder im Orderbook? Jetzt im Umsatz.
in the order book, or are you talking about revenue?
Not specified.
It's not specified. Okay, well, because otherwise it wouldn't make sense, would it? No. The 100 millions are majorly from the H41 tunnel activities, and there's a slight increase for the rest.
Explain the increase in contract assets, and when do you expect it to normalize?
Contract assets.
Contract assets? Oh, I need your help on that. What does that mean?
Vertragsvermögenswerte.
In German. Oh, you mean the positions in the balance sheet? Active assets or passive liabilities, or what? What do you mean? The interpreter cannot hear the person in the audience, unfortunately, not using the microphone. So you mean invoiced? As I said, well, our net working capital in the first half year has increased slightly. We need to improve that, and that is driven by the claims, especially, and also the geological changes. And so it takes a certain time then to invoice that, and that is the main driver, or let's say the main driver are these additional, let's say, orders that that need time then to be invoiced, and it depends also on the volume, and so that is the main driver. And we are focusing and making sure that in the next half year that will decrease. We have questions for a few last questions, or we have time, sorry, for a few last questions here in the audience. I see a hand at the very back of the audience. Blaise Hab Arnold, Inval Pension Fund.
To a call for tender, do you already know in advance what you are not doing to do yourself but subcontract? And in general, what percentage of the work do you subcontract and what margin is left when you do so? Thank you.
Also da muss man vielleicht etwas unterscheiden.
I think you have to differentiate between infrastructure and civil engineering. Thank you for the question. So how big is the
Die eigene Wertschöpfung
own,
sehr häufig als Schlüsselfertigung.
in infrastructure? Well, it's lower because we have, so to say, ready parts that are already done or then pre-constructed, so in subcontract. So you have all those who works with metals, and then they come then afterwards. So it's also a very low, let's say, figure that where we are able to execute. In civil engineering, we have a higher
Da haben wir auch sehr viel Blue-Collar-Personal, also gewerbliches Personal. Und in dem Zeitpunkt, wenn die Anfrage
value creation, because we have a lot of blue collars, and so when we come to the tenders, we first verify the parameters. So you have a demand then for planning, then sometimes we also have a draft then of the construction contract, and do we have the right person then for the treatment then of the tenders and for the execution? Are there any no-goes in that contract where we will say, very sorry, we cannot sign such a contract, so we don't even start with planning or calculation? So what are the subcontractors who are then available? Do they exist? Do they have the right know-how that we want? There are certain that are able to execute this task or not, or is there a certain competency with certain subcontractors? So those are the typical questions. How high the percentage is, the share and percentage is, well, it depends. Sometimes we do things ourselves. Sometimes we find something who can execute the work for us. So we know what we are able to do at that moment, but it can also change. And so it's not the greatest question that preoccupies us then in the tender, or let's say during the project selection meeting. The first questions that we ask is, do we have the competencies? Who is the client who is demanding this project? So those are the standard questions that we respond to. And the margin that remains, well, you will see it in the results, won't you? Yes, sir. Are there any more urgent questions? Otherwise, we will remain at your disposal out there, because we are about to close this Q&A conference. So thank you very much for your questions. And Jens and Stefan, thank you for the answers. And we are somewhat coming to the closure then of our conference, and we will expect you then for our lunch outside the room. And so thank you very much for having been here. Thank you very much for your trust in Implenia. We